Kolbinsky tells us how long it took to get Luis Navia to admit his true identity.
So they were threatening to cut him up. And then that, with the fact that I guess Ivan had called back and talked to the twins, or he'd already talked to him, I guess, or whatever, but Ivan convinced Lewis that the twins are going to abandon us. They'll send somebody in here to kill us. They're not going to get us out. We're done. And so then, he said, okay, you got me.
How long did that take from beginning to end till he finally acquiesces?
Yeah, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes.
Hardened criminal. There you go.
I think it was the razor blades more than my persuasion that did anything.
Welcome to Game of Crimes.
They needed somebody to accompany or to go with a customs agent out of Houston. He was bringing a triggerfish in, and they weren't going to let the customs guy run around Venezuela by himself.
Okay. Can you tell everybody what a triggerfish
is? Let's talk about triggers, because the Secret Service used to use that a lot too. And it has nothing to do with sheep. Trust me, it's technology
or fish. A triggerfish is a device that's used to locate cell phones. You pick up the signal, and through triangulation, etc. You can, and also it can intercept the calls.
And the modern version of those are called the Stingrays, the cell site simulators.
Yeah. And so we were sent over there to monitor that group that Lewis was part of, in particular Ivan de la Vega, who was the main transporter. He was the guy that brought Lewis into this deal. And so we were up on Ivan, and then we got up on Lewis's cell phone as well as a result of being up on Ivan. So.
Where are you up on that phone at? In Venezuela or in the U.S.?
In Venezuela. No, in Venezuela. We were over there because we were, actively, I think at one point we were in the same damn hotel as him,
So this is back when Venezuela still got along with the United States.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, so from the time you kind of catch wind of this, because what we want to do is bookend people, kind of let them know where we are in the journey. So for the time you actually start getting wind and your trajectory starts like in 2001 till you finally end up taking down Luis, how long of a time frame is that?
Oh no, I'm there. I within a week or so, because like I said, I was not assigned to that particular case. They needed somebody, and I'll go to Venezuela. I love to go to Venezuela. And so I went over there, and actually, Steve, I was pretty much on a need-to-know basis while I was over there. And I think in particularly because I was sitting next to a customs guy the whole time. And I don't know how familiar you are with that case. It's brought out in the book. Jesse does a good job of that because, the Brits are involved, and there is a lot of interagency.
And the book you're referring to is Pure Narco by Jesse Fink and Luis Navia that we actually have. It's listed on our book site, book page on our website.
So, no, it was we finally then we were started off in Caracas, and then as Lewis details in his book, he talks about the cab driver tipping him off that the federales there talked to him, and then went to Maracaibo. So we then hopped. We flew over in a Venezuelan army or police aircraft over to Maracaibo's were set up, and then we tracked him to a mall, and of course 6'4" gringo, they weren't letting me anywhere near the mall. So the customs guy I was with, he was of Latin descent, and so he was with them when they picked him up. And so then we all get bundled back up. We head back over to Caracas. And I don't know, was it the next day or so is when I was asked to talk to Lewis, because I had been talking with, because once they identified him, you heard the story about the fingerprints at a meeting. Lewis was an unknown at the time. He showed up, and he was referred to as the Greek. They get a glass that had his fingerprints on it, identify him as as Luis Navia. There was an outstanding warrant customs head on him. Bob Harley, agent.
Hey, and Eric, let's talk about that for just a second, because I don't want to say it's unique, but not that it's rare, but it is kind of a different level when somebody stays behind the scenes so much that you've got to work to identify them, where you've got the other people like the cocaine cowboys, Magluta. What was the name? Magluta?
Sal Magluta and
yeah, you got guys that are just being ostentatious with their wealth. Steve, ostentatious means, is a big word. It means like really, extravagant.
You know what this means?
Yeah. I can't tell. Your lens is fogging up. Apparently you're thinking about Phoebe. But that's not. Everybody thinks all these. A lot of dope dealers like our Pablo or El Chapo, they're well known. But for somebody to stay in the background for as long as he did, and I'm not trying to give him too many props, but that was actually, he was doing good work, at least from what he was doing, to stay in the background and unknown for that long, wasn't he?
Yeah, that's kind of the whole unique thing about him. He was in that business that long, and around to talk about it now. And he was very cautious. He changed his identity all the time, changed his phones all the time. He worked at it to stay anonymous, and he wasn't one of these that had to deal with the main guy. He was happy dealing at whatever level he was at. He was making money. And he didn't want to put himself in those positions where, he'd be compromised. So yeah, it was a big shock for him to show up in the middle of that, because nobody has. And we're talking Greece, we're talking Britain. I think Spanish were even involved with that. There were all sorts of people involved in that. Nobody knew who he was.
So tell us about, I know Luis talked about it a little bit, but tell us about getting the fingerprints. Did that happen while you were there, or did that happen before?
That happened while I was there. I was not there for that particular, I wasn't, again, I'm in the background this whole time. But it was at a meeting there, actually down in by Rio Norco, where the dope was stashed down there. It was at a hotel down there where they got him. There was another set of folks down there working that end of it while I was up in Caracas.
So, and go into just a little bit more detail, why were you, you told about I was brought into it to help, but you weren't really just sitting in the background, right? Just like along for the ride. There were some other things that you were doing that DEA could uniquely do, right? That customs couldn't do or other people couldn't do. Just kind of give us a little bit more detail about what it is you were doing while you were down there.
It's really a lot of liaison, communication work back and forth with the case agents and others involved, and, keeping people updated. And then I'm getting information that helps us doing what we're doing and that sort of thing. And I was the conduit for information coming to and from DEA.
Was the customs agents assigned to Colombia, or did he come out of Miami, or where did he come
No,
from?
he came out of Houston, because that's where the equipment came from. And I guess he was familiar with that equipment.
Now that you look back on it, before we get to the event, the arrest and the seizure and stuff, but looking backwards, did you cross paths with Luis somewhere prior to that without knowing it, only to discover it later from the investigation, or one of your investigations? Did some of the dope you seized, did that belong to Luis? Did you guys have any connection at all prior to this?
Not that I can say for sure. I wrote a foreword in his book, and I kind of made reference to, wondering now in hindsight if maybe some of that dope we picked up coming across the Rio Grande had his fingerprints on it, or some of the Pan X dope. The other operation I was involved with might have had some stuff. Well, actually, no, I can't say Pan X because that was afterwards. But yeah, so I kind of, even like that, the 3 kilo deal that came out of the Florida Keys. Could that have been some that he had run in there previously? He was running dope in there at that time.
It's very possible, because it's not that big a crowd.
No. So yeah, so I kind of allude to that in when I wrote the foreword.
Yeah, because you guys end up having a special relationship, but to get there, it's like we say, most drug traffickers either die on the job or they go to federal prison. And so as you're getting close, you talk about rolling them up. Talk about what goes into that. What other things are you working on at that time? Are there other investigations being spun up? Some of this dope, and the other thing you can go into detail is there's about 26 tons of dope down there, but there were some reasons we couldn't charge them in the United States for that dope, because there was no nexus, right, to the United States with some of this activity that was going on.
No, they charged Ivan de la Vega got charged with it.
No, I meant, but with Luis, he didn't get charged with any part of the 26 tons, did he? From a United States standpoint, did he?
No, and that's due to a deal that Bob Harley, the customs agent, because of Lewis's cooperation, they agreed not to charge him with that because right away he started after our initial encounter, he decided he's coming over to Team America.
You know what we always say: whoever flips first gets the best deal, don't we?
Yeah.
There's only there's only so many seats on this ride, pal. That's filling up quick.
Yep.
But before he could get to Team America, was it decided that were you going to speak with him? I mean, it's a customs case. I'm surprised that they let you anywhere near Luis.
And I know I was talking to Bob Harley, not the customs guy, and forgive me, I can't remember his name now, but for whatever reason, I was in touch with Harley. I don't know, maybe because part of the fact that I was customs at one time, and then it was out of Florida, type of thing. So I don't know, but I definitely was the lead on talking to Luis. I was prepped with what they had him on and everything else, and so yeah, I was the lead on that.
So let's talk about how this all gets set up. So you were just talking about he's at the mall. So kind of take it from there. When's the first official law enforcement contact with Luis to roll him up and bring him into custody?
Well, it wasn't until I believe it was the next afternoon because we were in Maracaibo, which is out in La Guajira, the northernmost peninsula out there, and so we all flew back to Caracas. It was the next afternoon, and they've got him sitting in the back of a big black SUV with Colombian. It was a Colombian cop and a Venezuelan cop, and I get in on. I'm on the passenger side in the rear, and the customs agent is on the other side, and so I greet him, by his name, and he starts, trying to speak to me in Spanish, telling me his name is Luis Navia. Soy un
Mexican or
yeah, soy mexicano, and I'm trying to think of the Spanish word for businessman, hombre de negocios or whatever he was saying. Start trying to, and I said, come on, I know you're Luis Navia, you're a U.S. citizen, and then I put him on the phone with Bob Harley. Bob basically told him, "Hey, listen to what the guy sitting next to you had to say. Just listen to him."
Why did you put him on the phone with Bob?
Well, it was kind of to let him know that the gig was up because he had a strange relationship with Bob. He would taunt Bob. He would send him cards and bow ties and different
It's
ties.
the ties, yeah.
Yeah. It's just so so they had a weird relationship.
it's one of those catch me if you can scenarios.
Exactly. So, you use whatever tool you got in your box at the time to get people to do what they're supposed to do, and so at that, so he's done with.
Did Bob mention anything about the ties while they were talking, just to let him know he knew?
I don't know if he did or not, but it was. But Luis tried to say no, and I said, and so finally, I think he and I kind of remember this a little differently. But what I remember what convinced him to come on board was the fact that I said, look, if you're not Luis Navia, and if you're not a U.S. citizen, then there's nothing I can do to help you other than I got to turn you back over to the Venezuelans. and
no, speak good English.
They had already threatened to cut him up with razor blades because they didn't. There was more dope that they didn't find. They knew from the wire that they were the wires that they were up on it. There was more dope down there, and they were looking for money and everything else, and so they were threatening to cut him up, and then that with the fact that I guess Ivan had called back and talked to the twins, or he'd already talked to him, I guess, or whatever. But Ivan convinced Luis that the twins are going to abandon us. They'll send somebody in here to kill us. They're not going to get us out. We're done. And so then, he said, okay, you got me.
How long did that take from beginning to end till he finally acquiesces?
Yeah, well, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes. It
Oh,
wasn't.
well,
It was.
hardened criminal. There you go.
It was.
Well,
I think it was the razor blades more than my persuasion that did anything.
well, the other thing, the Mejia brothers are known for their violence.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, they were as bad as Rasguño, if not worse.
Yeah. No, hold on. I got a kick out of, Dios, and then there's a heart, amor, common bumper sticker when I was down there. God is love. And I used to say, but I drive like the devil. and then some of the nicest people in the world, and then you hear all these stories about the torture and the murder and stuff. It's just, it's kind of hard to reconcile the two different levels of culture there. But anyway.
That's
so
true.
Here's a guy, there's 26 tons on a boat. There's a bunch more dope that he's been responsible for moving. And it takes you 10 minutes to break him. So I'm sitting there going, oh, if only everything was that easy, right?
Well, that's just Eric's capabilities as a professional interrogator.
Thank you, Steve. Yeah.
That or
all
just
the years of
relaying
experience.
Let me tell you what the Venezuelans said. We're going to carve you up with razor blades. I'll talk. But so what did he talk about with you?
We don't get into debriefings or any, trying to get information at that point. We're just, our goal is to get him safely back to the United States now.
And talk about that process. What do you have to go through for somebody to voluntarily want to come back to the United States? I mean, what kind of things do you legally have to document in order to make that happen?
You threatened to cut him up with a razor blade.
Yeah. Actually, at my level, basically the Venezuelans expelled him from their country. And so they delivered him to the back of a P-3 aircraft, customs aircraft. They're at the air base, military air base. But there were concerns, it was a pretty heavily guarded, caravan we had there because we weren't sure, we got two of their main people in custody and, are they going to try to take him out before we get him to the States?
Why did the Venezuelans give him up? Why didn't they want to keep him and try him and get the glory and credit? Why would the Venezuelans give him up?
They weren't going to get anything out of him. So what if they put him in their jail? I mean, there's for them, there's no benefit. If they gotten some of the dope or the money, then they'd have kept him. But, and I don't know what sort of other deals might have been cut in the background, but he's a U.S. citizen, so he's rightfully ours. But they gave us Ivan, but Ivan was Colombian, and of course the Colombians, agreed to turn him over to us, so there were no issues there. So really, the Venezuelans, other than the fact that they could put some charges on him, had no real claim to him. But those are all the.
Now you said that they let him go because they didn't find dope, but I thought that there was a bunch of dope. I mean, or did that 26 tons, was that just estimated or was that actually seized?
I don't remember how much was actually seized, but there was. No, not all 26 was seized. There was more out there, and that's why they were threatening to, cut up Luis and Ivan, because they wanted to know where the rest of the dope was. The Venezuelans did.
It was just hidden on cargo ships out there somewhere, right?
From my understanding and what Luis tells me is none of it ever made to any of the ships. It was all there in the Rio Orinoco, somewhere stashed. And then, when they jumped the gun and went on that raid down there, and so there may be stuff still sitting at the bottom of that river somewhere. Who knows?
There's so much dope out there.
Or the Venezuelans found it. I don't know.
Or it's floated back to the beaches of Miami.
By
the way, here's a piece of trivia. There's a very famous Irish musician called Enya, and she sings a lot of songs, and one of them is called the Orinoco Flow, based on the Orinoco out of Venezuela. There you go.
Huh.
Well, there's a lot of addicted fish out that way now. So
I
be
guess.
careful with fish out there. Don't eat what you catch.
Had a fish swim along and go, hey, man. a little difficult.
Yeah.
What'd you hold it, man? Can you get me? I'm hurting. Jonesing, baby. All right. So what do fish listen to? Do they listen to the Grateful Dead? I don't know. It's tough to put speakers underwater like that for them. But so you've got Luis now in a P3. I think those the Orion P3s, those surveillance craft.
Yeah, surveillance aircraft. Yeah.
So you've got the P3s, and so very comfortable, leather seats, reclining, first class. flight attendants, alcohol, right? Everything.
Yeah. It's you're better off laying down on the metal floor than you are sitting in those seats they hang on the walls.
So tell us about the trip back with Lewis. How does that go? Do you have much conversation? Do you have with him? What are you trying to get done on the flight back?
Well, I'm trying to develop rapport with him, and just get him to face reality and hey, today's the first day of the rest of your life type of thing, and depending upon the choices you make from here on out is going to have a lot to do with how the rest of your life ends up. And and I've experiences. Everybody has in law enforcement. There are people that they're eh, glad it's finally over. So, people are sometimes just glad they finally got caught because there's a lot of stress and pressure living that lifestyle. And that was true with Lewis. I don't know. I gave him a pack of crackers and something to eat, and I don't know. Maybe the fact that he was talking to a gringo for the first time and I don't know how many years and felt like he was going home probably, helped him a little bit of comfort.
Did
Well,
you see that?
you probably treated him with a little bit of respect too.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, listen, he's a likable guy. I mean, he was respectful to everyone in law enforcement, and so yeah, so there was no need to treat him with anything other than respect.
But there was something a little bit to you also as well unique about Lewis is that not only the fact he stayed under the radar, but he didn't like guns. He didn't like violence. He just wasn't one of these big gun carrying, flash a gold plated AK-47 type of guys.
No, he did everything he could to stay away from that stuff.
Sometimes it found him like Rascunio.
Yeah. No, there were several instances where he was a little worried.
And the alligators. I remember something about the alligators.
Yeah. That was Mexico. Yeah.
He was very close to being alligator food.
People think we live an exciting life. Holy cow!
So, how long of a trip on a P3 is it? Did you have to stop somewhere? Were you able to fly all the way back?
That's maybe 2 hours. We flew into Lauderdale, and then of course now you got all the cameras and all the big shots and the press. And as soon as we landed, people came and stripped him out of my arms, and away he went.
Who took him from you? Was it the marshals or customs?
No, I think there was some customs. I don't think Harley wasn't there. I don't know who all. I don't know. Just listen. You're working this case, you're getting little sleep, and you're constantly moving and seeing different faces, and so I was ready for a break because we've been down there about a week or so. Then I had to go back to Colombia, and I probably spent the night and got another plane, went back to Colombia.
So how long was your initial, so was that the end of your initial relationship with Lewis, is just from the arrest, flight back and turn him over?
No, actually, shortly thereafter, I was transferred back to the United States to the Tampa office.
Yes, because you pissed your rack off, apparently. And so now let's ask you this: who did you piss off at the Tampa office by the time you got there?
Well.
Okay, here we go. The list is long and distinguished. Let me think.
Actually, I get kicked out of Pan X when a new GS came in. He wanted to start working air smuggling out of Venezuela. I said, we're a maritime operation. Why, and he wanted to dump our bread and butter informant, send him off to prison. No.
Pan X is one of the best freaking operations it's ever been.
Well, we'll have to get to Pan X here in a moment. So let's hear about so you get you and the rack butt heads. Your tour is not extended in Colombia. Now you're back in Tampa.
Right.
So how do your paths cross with Lewis then back in Tampa?
Well, with Pan X is for those who don't know, it's a maritime operation and it's intel driven. Law enforcement works intelligence, whether it be sources or electronic means, wiretaps, a lot of stuff with SOD type of thing. And then we hand off that intel to the JADF East, which is a naval operation down in Key West that manages our military assets in the Caribbean and over in the Pacific. And to effect in essence, the interdictions. They take our information, send the boats out to interdict the smugglers. And, you know, Lewis had information about all those players and what, you know, what they were doing, who's who in the game. And so I then started visiting him up in Coleman. He was assigned to Coleman, which is a federal correctional institute, about an hour and a half or so north of Tampa. So I'd go up there and for a while there, fairly regular basis, going up there and interviewing him. So that's how we kind of got to know each other through all that.
Eric, you mentioned JADF, the Joint Interagency Task Force. Just give us a real quick overview of what JADF means.
Well, Joint Interagency.
I mean, what it consists of. You've been
answering the
question. It's a military organization that coordinates the military assets in particular regions. You've got JADF East, you got JADF West, and I think they had JADF. There was one that I know operated along the Mexican border at one time. I don't know if that's still in operation or not, but and especially when there's no war going on, it's great exercise for the military. They can send up their aircraft, track, air smugglers, track aircraft. They can, try to locate and then track naval assets, teaching them targeting, methodology. And then actually using Coast Guard, what they call leadettes or law enforcement detachments, because, the Coast Guard has arrest powers where the military doesn't, because the Coast Guard has that dual role. So then they would put Coast Guard detachments on these naval vessels, as well as obviously on the Coast Guard vessels, and they were the ones who would actually go out and affect the arrest of the smugglers. And then those cases, once there was a seizure, then it was turned over us for the prosecution and follow-up investigation.
I don't want to give up any means or methods here, just because it's such a successful operation. And when you read about or see on television about these huge Coast Guard seizures in the Caribbean or on the western side of Central America, that's probably a JADF operation. A PANX operation. I'm sorry.
Yeah, working in conjunction with JADF.
Yeah, and JADF kind of provides you guys with the assets that you need to do all that, whether it's the boats or the aircraft.
DEA, customs. We don't have boats like that.
So let me tell you, there's a couple badass people dog on especially the military guys. Coast Guard is like the redheaded stepchild next to Space Force now. Nobody likes Space Force. But that
would be the fun one to go into now, I think.
Everybody makes fun of the uniforms. Looks too much like Star Trek. And by the way, here's a clue for you guys. Never dress in red. Anybody in red on Star Trek gets killed. The security guys always get killed. But going back to that, you see those videos too of those coasties. They're going after those cocaine submarines. And there was one picture of this one coastie who hops off, and these guys aren't slowing down. So he jumps from I think he's on a rigid, one of those
inflatables.
Yeah, jumps onto that thing and is banging on the hood, banging on the thing of that's like, can you imagine trying to do a traffic stop in the water? Hey, pull over.
Yeah.
But it was some bad. But that's the whole thing is, especially post 9/11, the Coast Guard has a increased mission, area of responsibility. And now, did you guys fight with them when they got Title 20? Did they have Title 21 authority?
Coast Guard? No, they're operating all on maritime law. They they've got some pretty broad search authority too, based on maritime law. And the hardest thing when you're working these cases is getting the host country, whatever country that ship is flagged under, before you can board them, search them, type thing. You got to get their permission. But once you get permission, then you go at it.
Yeah, and there's some great seizures. You see video of it all the time. They're going after those cigarette boats, those speeders and everything else. So, but now PanX. The other thing too is we say PanX, but what does PanX mean?
Panama Express.
And where did that come from?
There was a female agent down in Panama, and she was another one that wouldn't back down. I don't know, Steve, did you ever know her? And again, God, I'm terrible. I'm forgetting names. But anyway, she was the one that I understand coined that when they were all starting this whole interdiction thing. I think initially it was called privateer. I think DEA was calling it privateer, Operation Privateer.
Right. Yeah, you're right.
And then somehow we got, and I don't know if Customs then proposed Panama Express. Basically, what was happening, a lot of these seizures, we would take the prisoners into Panama because of our treaties with Panama, et cetera. And so, it was like the Express. You'd get busted on the high seas, transported to Panama, and then you get the Express to the United States. So it was the Express coming from Panama, the Panama Express, bringing them into the U.S. So, and then in these cases, just for listeners, is jurisdiction is established either in the District of Columbia or wherever port that they come into. So, so it was important for us that if it was our intel, and the way I always thought the rules should be played, whoever's intel it was, it should be your case. The intel that led to the seizure. And so we would, fly them from Panama or where else, we'd have to bring them into the Middle District of Florida here in order to be able to prosecute it. If we took them into Miami, then Miami would have to prosecute.
So the Middle District, but you're talking about Tampa, right?
Tampa area, yes. Yes, yeah. And that's where Panama Express is headquartered, out of the Tampa
And if you
office.
think about it, the Coast Guard cutters, most of them are based out of Key West, which falls into the Southern District of Florida.
Right. Now, the dope can go into Key West or anywhere else, but the people have to come into the jurisdiction. So I think that was the Express coming from Panama, because that's where, especially back then, the majority of prisoners were taken into Panama.
Well, and Morgan, if you remember, we were talking to Zach and Tommy Cendrick. I kept thinking about the guy with all the F-bombs. But
the only person who can drop more F-bombs than Samuel L. Jackson is Tommy Cendrick.
That's hilarious. I think that I'll tell you what, we've had some great guests on here.
And if we had to bleep out his F-bombs, it would have been one long bleep for an interview, because we couldn't go.
Especially the second half.
Was he a New Yorker?
No, he's from Maryland.
He's from Maryland, but he did time in Baltimore, I think, or no, Washington D.C. and stuff. But Tommy's just a good old redneck farm boy from Maryland.
Yeah. But if you remember with both of those guys, when they were talking about extraditing Victor Boot and Paul LaRoe into the United States, they had to get planes to bring them back into the United States that will land in the jurisdiction where you wanted them prosecuted, which typically is the Southern District of New York, because they're so aggressive up there.
Oh, yeah.
So, and that kind of, ties into what Eric's talking here about with the Southern District versus the Middle District of Florida.
So it's all about fiefdoms and kingdoms, and this is my case, right?
Yeah. Oh no, and along those lines, there's a group out of Washington called the PD 26. Steve, are you familiar with that? The Presidential Directive 26, and I think it's a directive, a president that determines the jurisdiction of this what we're talking about here. It was a presidential directive at one time. So we would every so often, agents, prosecutors get together. We'd have these annual meetings. And we're in Puerto Rico one time, and Assistant United States Attorney down there is arguing that all of these cases, all these seizures that are in the Caribbean, should come to Puerto Rico for prosecution. That, to him, that was logical. And he's sitting right behind me, we're kind of a tables, classroom type situation. I turn around, I look at him, and I say, so you're telling me, here I am again, you're telling me.
About to make more new friends and get kicked out of another operation. Please go ahead.
That it's my source, my intelligence, I'm paying my source. You want me to turn it over to you for prosecution? And he says, well, yeah. And I said, why don't you go and make your own effing cases?
It was all about stats. That's all he's looking for.
Yeah, absolutely.
Come on, at some point, you got to be writing a memo for all of the shit you're saying now.
No.
Well, you think about that too. I mean, if the guy goes to trial, you got to bring all your witnesses, the agents, the informants, everybody to Puerto Rico. It's ridiculous.
that was a turd in a punch bowl. That wasn't.
Yeah.
That ain't gonna float, man.
When you talk about taxpayer dollars, waste, fraud, and abuse, that's exactly what that'd be.
No, I mean, to me, that's why I was astounded that he would even try to propose that. You know, so.
Well, there have been bigger things. So, but now, how long is PanX still operational? Is it still
operational, still going? It went to being an operation. I guess it's PanX Strike Force now. I understand that they have their own line item in the budget every year.
Yeah, that was when I was running the OSDEF Fusion Center there in Washington, the Organized Crime Drug Enforcement Task Force, which falls under DOJ. We used to fly down to Tampa for meetings there, and that was a discussion about, what that does is that opens up another big pot of money for PanX to operate off of, coming straight out of DOJ's OSDEF program. So it's a OSDEF operation now.
Yeah. Well, they originally PanX started with a source that was cooperating source, a Colombian who was moving a lot of dope up the East Pack. So the original, what they called PanX South, was based in Sarasota. And then when I came on board is when we started PanX, what's called North, and we focused on the Caribbean section. And now they're combined, and they got some fancy building here. It's one of those places with a black fence and nothing on the side of the building. They got one of those.
We're not a government building.
No, they got one of those. They got their own gym. I mean, it's crazy.
And one of those places where even the cleaning staff has to have an SF-86 filled out at security clearance.
They had a GS-14 that managed the building. You needed a light bulb or something like that. You had to go to. They were just, I don't know. They're padding the payroll, I think.
And outside they probably got the flag for the United States and every federal agency, whether it's law enforcement, DOD, whatever it is up there.
Well, plus now, you got state and county folks there too, so they got their flags.
There you go.
We need to have a flag protocol officer. So we'll have that too. So, but Eric, before we, as we're going along, during your career, how many people did you end up pissing off and have to get moved down? I mean, we're up to 3 now.
I don't know. But, I really, until we started talking about it, I hadn't put it all together.
The first step to realizing you have a problem is to acknowledge it.
Yeah. So I guess, I guess I tend to be a logical person, and if it's not logical to me, I have a little bit of not so much tolerance, I guess.
Well, so many people are afraid to say anything. I mean, right's right, wrong's wrong.
Exactly. That's the way I look at it.
So with Luis, but I kind of want to close off on Luis too, is that how long was your relationship with him officially from the time in Venezuela until, you're back in Tampa? How long did you end up interfacing or working with him or debriefing him or running him?
Basically, we stayed in touch the whole, he was in jail about 5 years, the whole time he was there in Coleman. And I kind of became, I guess, the gatekeeper at one point when other agents from around the country, around the world had something that they thought Luis might have some information about. I was usually the one they would contact and especially from the DEA side in particular, go talk to him. And then, we can, whenever we had a case or something I thought that might be relevant, he may have some relevant information, we would go up and debrief him on that, get some background or, try to, put some more dope on somebody. We'd go up and talk to Luis.
Did he help you make some additional cases?
Oh, yeah. No, I don't think he originated any cases. Most of his stuff was historical that he gave us because he was, he couldn't do much from where he was.
Well, you remember, and you know this better than we do, Eric, but I remember from reading the book and then Luis telling us about it as well. He had to get permission from Colombia to cooperate because he didn't want them going back and killing all his family and everything.
Yeah.
And that was that Rascuña, I think he had to go to?
Yeah, basically his now ex-wife went up to, gutsy gal, went up to him and, and he said, got nothing to worry about.
Oh, wow.
Well, you got nothing to worry about, but you don't get to keep the money either.
No, yeah. Well, yeah. But it's kind of, honestly, most Colombians end up cooperating. I mean, one of the first cases, and this is how really was the beginning, the thing that really kicked off Pan-X North, had a boat captain, got some bad advice, and he didn't cooperate. He gets to federal prison. He was up in Coleman too for a while, and gets in there and finds out everybody but him's cooperated. And he's looking. He got life initially, because it was like his second or third federal charge. So I was asked to hook up with a couple FBI agents and go interview this guy. And so now he's ready to give up everything. Who hired him, who, just the whole 9 yards, all the other stuff he'd ever done. And, he just came completely clean. And I felt bad for the guy because he got a Rule 35 and stuff, but he was still looking at another 20 years. And he used to call me all the time, trying to see what I could do for him.
Save me.
No,
we have discussed Rule 35 on this podcast before. Some of these players will become familiar with it, but Rule 35 is, tell us, Eric.
It's after you're convicted, if you can get some new information that leads, to new cases, arrests, seizures, whatever, then that's taken into consideration. You get further reduction in your sentence.
So going back to Luis now, now is it? Let's be clear: is it Luis or Luis? Because I'm just thinking, to me when I look at it, it looks like Luis.
That's dependent upon if you want to throw the Hispanic accent on it, or
Well, mi español es perfecto. Mi acento es perfecto. So,
okay.
Bienvenidos,
Luis.
Amigos. So, we'll say Luis. So,
Luis.
Luis. But what was Luis? I mean, when we talked to Luis, he was facing a lot of years. He got a healthy Rule 35 benefit, I think, from his cooperation, didn't he?
Yes. Well, start off with is, the fact that he didn't get charged is his role in that whole Venezuelan deal. That
probably saved his life. I mean, literally.
He'd still be in jail if he got snagged with
that
all
amount of dope. His guidelines would probably started like.
And Bob Harley really went to bat for him on that one. So.
And how important was his cooperation to you guys? I mean, I know he's just one guy, but is this one guy that is, compared to the others, has a lot of, between the historical information, helps you guys get a better idea of how things work? What was the effect of his cooperation with you and with DEA?
I can't cite specific examples because as this whole Pan-X thing morphed, I was more on the intel side of the stuff. I mean, I worked the intel to the point where the seizures were affected, and then kind of the, building that wall, the cases were then turned over to other agents who had no idea what intel was used or what assets were used. And all they know is that it starts with an interdiction on the high seas, and that's all they need to know. You didn't have to get into your sources or any of that sort of thing. So really he provided a lot of information to a lot of other agents who were working, they'd have a seizure and find out that it was involving somebody that Lewis had maybe done some work for. So they'd go and they'd talk to Lewis and get information that would help their case. And then for the same reason, I really didn't need to know. I have enough of my own business to deal with on the intel side to know what, these guys, how their cases were coming for court.
And that's a great education for the investigators too, because the more you learn about how the big cocaine or whatever, it doesn't have to be cocaine, the big drug trafficking organizations operate, the better equipped you are to try to thwart their efforts, to try to work your way in there and put your butts in jail.
And we, myself and my partner was Mike Diorio was with Homeland Security guy, and I still have a heart. I don't know what they're calling themselves now, but a former customs guy.
Yeah, there you go.
And he and I ran the main source for Pan-X North. And he was this guy. I knew about him when I was in Colombia. He was a major target for us. He's actually the individual who went to Eduardono and got them to reconfigure their open fisherman boat, reinforce the transom, and hung twin Yamahas on it. So he pioneered that whole go fast concept with the Eduardono. And so funny because it wasn't that, it was that boat captain that I interviewed gave up this individual as the transportation guy, the transportation coordinator who arranged the whole load. I talked to some other people on his crew, the boat captain's crew, and got 2 or 3 people to corroborate what he said, and I ended up getting a warrant here in the Middle District. When it's your time, because his then, I guess we'll call her a paramour. It wasn't his wife, but the mother, she didn't even, he didn't have any kids. He had 1 kid with her. Anyway, he was living in Panama at the time and was getting ready to go to buy some freighters and stuff out of Europe along the same lines that Lewis was doing. And he asked her to come to Panama and meet with him to discuss financial things and the kids and stuff, because he figured he was going to be gone for a while to Europe. And so she got pissed off and went into the Barranquilla office and gave them the information about he was going to be there. So I took my little piece of paper and flew down to Panama, and working with the Panamanian police there. It was funny because I can remember this day. I was sitting on a bench at the airport, right at the bottom of the escalator where people were coming down the escalator, and I saw him. I had seen some photographs of him, but the guy was distinctive enough. He's from San Andreas. He was a distinctive enough looking individual. As soon as I saw him, I just kind of tapped the Colombian cop on the leg and got up and walked away, because they don't, not supposed to be involved in those things. And
I like the way you say I'm not supposed to be involved in those things, but I'm going to get involved in those things.
So
It's kind of like some other guests we've had on our show that were supposed to stay at the base, Steve. And how about Chris and Dave, supposed to don't leave the base?
Yeah.
I have no recollection of that, Your Honor.
Yeah, Senator.
Yeah. And so anyway, her name Renee? Yeah, the female agent, DEA agent in Panama at the time, Renee. Something. Anyway, so we're, all this negotiations going on in the back room there at the airport. And I guess, he's a Colombian citizen. They're just going to expel him from the country. We had the DEA jets sitting out there on the runway waiting to go. The head of narcotics, the head of the number 2 guy from narcotics, found out we had him in custody. And he was blocking us taking him out of the country because he had not been notified. Well, so Renee gets on the phone with him. So obviously she knew him from her years in Panama and working narcotics with him. She just reads him the Riot Act.
Good for her.
5 minutes later, we're airbound. We're in the air. So I said, damn, girl.
Good job.
She was good. Yeah. Yeah. I wish I could remember her name. After she left Panama, I lost track to wherever she went. But yeah, and it was funny because, again, Joe Ruddy was the assistant United States attorney working this, and he said, and for whatever reason, don't wait till you get in international airspace. Don't let him say anything. Don't talk to him about anything, and nothing. Just wait till you get international airspace. So right away he said, "Man, I tried to turn myself in, and they kicked me out of the embassy in Bogota, and and then I come around to the embassy in Panama, and the guard wouldn't even let me get to the gate, and so
stop talking. Stop talking."
Yes, he did. I did. Listen, stop. We're not going to talk yet. Wait. So when the pilots told me we had cleared international airspace, I said, okay, now we can start talking. And he just wouldn't shut up. And it was funny because it was myself, Jose, FBI agent. Anyway, there was the 2 of us. We had to overnight in Gitmo. So they put us up to.
What's Gitmo? Tell everybody what Gitmo is.
Come on, everybody knows where Gitmo is. Club Gitmo.
In Cuba, they're the military base in Cuba. This is pre 9/11, and we were probably the only guests there at the time. But anyway, so they give us we're in the BOQ, the Bachelor Officers Quarters, and so they give us like this little 1-bedroom efficiency type thing. And so we put our, and again, we'll just go to bed. We'll talk tomorrow. We'll go talk tomorrow. So now we put him in the bedroom, and so now one of us has got to stay awake all night.
Oh,
We
jeez.
and just keep an eye on this guy. So anyway, so we get him back to States, and that was, what was that, 2001, and we're now 21 years later. He's still working.
Wow.
He's
So,
still.
quick question: what was the concern about the Assistant United States Attorney? You'll hear these guys say, and other feds say AUSAs, but what was the concern with the AUSA about him? Why was there concern about speaking before you had cleared into international airspace?
I really, it didn't make sense to me. I don't understand. To this day, I don't understand. It's because, he probably had tried a case somewhere and it became an issue, and so he was just eliminated. And anybody bringing that point of contention up again, I don't know.
I don't know either. I know Joe Ruddy, but I don't know why you would do that.
Yeah,
well, if that held true, then you couldn't talk to any source in a country until you were in international waters.
I don't know, but
Yeah.
so most
When
of the
we
time.
want to.
Oh, yeah.
And I wasn't supposed to get involved, but I did. I like the way you caveat some things here. So, Eric, so let's talk about the next country you got kicked out of.
Well, I guess that would have been Pan-X.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a second. So, you're a logical guy. You're like the Spock of DEA. Things got to make sense. So, and it was maritime, right? You're a maritime operation. So, what started happening that got you crossways?
New GS came in.
And GS is a group
supervisor. Yeah, he came in, and it's like a new sheriff coming to town. He wants to bring in all of his own, guys for his command staff, and the GS who I was working for at the time, they'd sent him down to Pan-X South. This is before they combined. So then they bring in this new GS, and he just wanted to shake things up. They wanted to get rid of our primary source, who, by the way, was still producing. We had him in a county jail, and we would go every day and pick him up out of jail and take him back every night. And he had a network of what we refer to him as subsources down in Colombia, who were supplying him with information about go fast leaving and different things. So for whatever reason, he wanted him out and wanted to start working air smuggling cases, and I just didn't express my dissatisfaction with that plan. And next thing I know, I'm transferred back to a regular enforcement group.
Back to working meth in Ottumwa, Iowa. Someplace like that.
They sent me back across the bridge over into Tampa, and which was fine.
But why? What was if you were a maritime group? Why is it? I mean, can a group supervisor change the focus of an entire operation from one thing to another?
He probably could have done it because the ASAC was going along with it. But it didn't make sense to me.
Well, and he's going to have to, because that's an OCDF operation now.
This is pre. Couldn't do it today. No, but back then, it was. And then it's listen, we had some really uncharted ground because, all right, DEA has some very strict guidelines on informant handling and especially the payment of informants. So we had our main source, and we developed a system where he provided us with this information that he got from his subsources. But yet, since he's in county jail every night, he's got to have some way to pay his subsources. So we would pay him, and then we set up bank accounts for these guys. And then part of our job, when we would travel down to Colombia and elsewhere and debrief these subsources. So we check that little box off, and then we would give them an ATM card. Well, we stopped doing that because the accounts were being overdrawn all the time. So we had to resort back to going down and make payments in person to them. But anyway, so we caught some flack about some of our methodology. everything, to the point where we were using QuickBooks to keep up with us. And I will give, it was Jeff Brunner was my group soup. And I will say that Jeff was pretty astute in that Jeff really stayed on top of the finances on this whole thing. And really, he was the one in charge of the finances. And so we had QuickBooks. And so everything was documented in QuickBooks. Well, I was told later that that there was going to be an accountant was going to be brought in, and that I had to transfer everything that was in QuickBooks because he was used to having everything in a ledger. So I had to start from day friggin' one and
Bullshit.
transcribe everything. And you know the ASAC, Steve. And so, yeah, I had to do that. I had foot surgery, and so I was doing midnights on a T3. So that's what I did for a whole month.
Oh my God!
And a T3 for those folks out there, it's a Title III. You're up on a wiretap.
Yeah, we were doing a wiretap, and so I got night diff and differential and holiday pay. So if you got to do something, try to take advantage. You get the best of it you can, So anyway. So yeah, and then did anybody come and tell me that we passed the audit with flying colors? No, it just typical, never went anywhere.
Unbelievable.
So yeah,
some things never change.
No, so yeah.
Speaking of eliminating waste, fraud, and abuse, if we could just eliminate trivial shit like that, the government could actually be in the red.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the black.
And then when I got transferred, it was like I get hauled before and asked because they were asking me specifically about the money. And I said, and I looked at them finally, these questions. I said, have you talked to the GS about this? And then it was like put to me like, well, what have you been doing for the last F4 effing years? And again, here's me. I said, you should know you've been signing my outstanding evaluations.
There you go.
That was my response.
And as a result of this, what was your next transfer?
No. Well, that's what I think finally got me transferred back into a regular enforcement group when I said that. Probably, I got transferred the next day. I was transferred.
With you, brother. I was responsible, I think, for more department and patrol policy than any one individual. Speaking
about that, I don't know, Steve. How many pages was the rules of conduct when you came on DEA? 2?
Oh Lord,
maybe.
Yeah, it was pretty short.
Yeah, well, I remember when I retired, it was about 15 to 20. I don't know. And I could go through there and I could point out, oh, that was Agent so-and-so who didn't know you couldn't drink and drive.
This is called a Kolbinsky Memorial policy here. Yeah.
No, I could go through it. About half of them I could say, oh, this was Agent so-and-so that caused this rule to be put in place. Yeah.
And how many rules are you responsible for, Eric?
No, none. I just, I know when to stop.
There you go.
Oh, well. But all right, so how many years on when you were, when you left Pan-X, you went back to the field office? How many years on did you have at that point?
I had 17 with DEA, and then I spent, I spent another year in a regular enforcement group, and then in my last year, I was asked to transfer over to the diversion group. Soup came to me because I was a short timer, and the diversion group is comprised of civilian investigators that deal with the regulation of pharmacies and audits of pharmacies, that sort of thing. And so when they come across a criminal violation, you need an agent there to pursue that criminal violation. So I was asked to go over there because the agent had been over there was now we're post 9/11, and he was in the reserves and got deployed. So I went over there and I rounded out my career there for about 8 months or something over there. And hey, it worked out for me because I had a bunch of sick leave built up. And, she said, just don't take 3 days off in a row. And so I whittled down my sick leave because back then you didn't get paid for your sick leave,
So what was that about 3 days in a row, though? You couldn't take more than 3 days in a row of sick leave?
Yeah, she said, don't take 3 days in a row off,
It looks suspicious.
Yeah. It looks like you're abusing the...
So your weekends look like Friday through Monday then?
Yeah, sometimes. They're on occasion.
Not
I
every
can neither
time.
confirm nor deny, Senator.
Not every time. You got to throw some variation in there.
Go Wednesday and Thursday off every now and then. But no, it's funny. I enjoyed that too, because that was back when the pill mills were real big here in Florida. And so we did that.
There was a whole there was a new series on Hulu called Dope Sick, and it was about OxyContin and the whole thing that happened with that and the role of DEA and the U.S. attorneys bringing that down. Did you get involved with any of the OxyContin stuff?
Yeah, that was at the very beginning, and Oxy. It continued to explode even after I left. But yes, I was part of that. Yep, in the very beginning, and then Florida changed its law.
Thank goodness.
Yes, it used to be that the pharmacies wouldn't communicate with each other and stuff. And so people would basically go, doctor shopping and go to different pharmacies and just they'd come from out of state. They'd bring vans of loads of people down here from other states and hit these pill mills. And it was just some unscrupulous doctor would open up shop, and 9 times out of 10, they had their own pharmacy within the place, and they were probably making more money off of selling the drugs than they were the actual visits that they were charging for. And then they take that same set of documents and go from pharmacy to pharmacy and having the script filled. And then there was also the whole internet thing. You pay your whatever fee, and the doctor over the telephone call said, "Oh yeah, you need pain medication," and so we were going after those guys too. So that was kind of fun. I got to do some traveling around the United States, hitting different places with that.
So let's talk about that real quick too, because that has been such a scourge too, because that whole thing, they've just finally finished the settlement with Purdue Pharmaceuticals. I think I can't remember how many billions it was, and the Sackler family had to disgorge at least some of their profits. I mean, we're talking billions of dollars, thousands of lives. I mean, people died, thousands of people addicted. Talk about that a little bit. I mean, how big was, when you got into this, how much money was being made on this? How many people were being affected by this?
I can't, in terms of the vast amount of monies, I could only speculate. Because I wasn't working the money side of these guys. But it just you walk into these pill mills, and I used to go in there and undercover and stuff too. And I mean, it's just, and then doing surveillance. It's a constant stream. There are probably a couple thousand people a day going in and out of these places, and that's just one location. It's incredible. And then you hear about in the news all the deaths and everything else that go along with it. So,
and you hear about the arrests that were taking place in these doctors, and it wasn't unusual to find multi-million dollars either in cash in their houses or in bank accounts that could be identified. They were making a ton of money off this stuff.
Yeah. Matter of fact, after I left, they brought in a task force agent. He was a financial crimes guy from the sheriff's department, and that's all he did then. He just went after the money of all these guys and working these diversion cases, and like you say, millions and millions. So
there was, I brought an agent in from DEA Miami when I was running the Fusion Center, and it was kind of like an education for the folks there at the Fusion Center to learn more about the pain clinics and the pill mills and so forth, what was going on. And he talked about working undercover there. And I can't remember if he said it was Pembroke Pines or it was all the way up farther north and, up in Broward County where one of these pain clinics was. And he'd gone in there several times and seen the guy and, the doctor, and explained his ailments. And he kept prescribing him, hundreds and hundreds of pain medications, whether it's Oxy or whatever it might be. And finally he goes in and he says, "Listen, Doc, I got to be straight with you." He said, "I'm a DEA agent, and I don't have any medications." Oh no, he didn't say it was DEA case. He said, "Look, I'm going to be straight with you. I'm addicted to pain pills." He said, "Well, I can't prescribe you anymore." And he said, I know. I just wanted to be honest with you and put our cards out on the table because you've been so nice to me." And he says, "Okay, well, listen, I'm going to give you one more prescription, but don't ever come back." I mean, what an idiot.
Yeah.
All about money.
And that's all it was. It was about money, and they changed their marketing tactics. I didn't realize this too, but the thing when you go in and they give you that scale of pain that says, where do you rate yourself for pain? That was a Purdue pharmaceutical thing.
Oh, really?
yeah.
That was the whole,
They started that?
it was all about marketing. The whole issue of what's called breakthrough pain now. So it allows you to even increase the size of the pill. So they went from 50 milligram to 100 milligram to 200 milligram. I mean, pretty
Damn.
soon the size of the pills looked like horse pills. It took a post hole. You had to get one of those old black powder rifles and ram the thing down somebody's throat. Those pills were getting so big. But I mean, like you said, that was kind of what you did for the last 8 months. But I mean, even then, it's like between the illegal stuff, it's like sometimes it's the legal stuff that does just as much or more harm in some ways because it's accessible and you've got people in positions of power that are giving you access to it.
No, it's disgusting.
Absolutely.
And then I think it was Pfizer here I read recently. They paid the single largest, I think, criminal fine, in history.
More than Purdue?
Yeah.
Wow.
We could get into current day pharmaceuticals and vaccines and, so, I work for the government, my whole career, I've worked for a government, and unfortunately, I question a lot of things we're being told these days.
Oh, yeah.
The problem is you just don't, your trust is eroded. So do your research, do your homework.
Thank you very much. Don't accept what you hear from other people. Do it yourself.
Yeah,
I think you said that a couple times there, Murph. So
I know. I
Yep.
say it everywhere I go.
Hey, then same thing with us. Do your research, do your fact checking. Do not take Edgar Allan Poe's advice because he said it first back, I think, like 1860. Believe nothing that you hear and only one half that you see.
Yeah.
So that's good advice. Hey, so Eric, when did you end your tour of duty with DEA? When's the final time they kicked you out?
I left voluntarily.
Um,
In good standing, you
I
retired.
Yeah, I could have stayed a couple more years. I retired, yes, in good standing. And I always tell people, "Oh yeah, this guy's an ex-DEA agent or ex cop." I said, "Ex? Did he retire, or was there some other reason that he left?" Don't just don't take that X as a good thing. Do your homework. Anyway, no. December 31st, 2007 was my last day. With DEA.
And now, from a retirement standpoint, how many years did you have federal, and were you able to include your state retirement? I mean, or were those two separate things?
Two separate things. So I got my 20 plus years and 55 with the federal retirement.
Oh, so you're living large then?
Not really, not with inflation.
Again, living large in Barranquilla, which is the hot spot of Colombia.
Yeah, and too, I didn't mention this part, but I did end up with a Colombian wife out of this whole deal too. So I did okay. Yeah.
Where's she from?
She's actually Cali, Bogota, from both born in Cali and grew up kind of pretty much in Bogota. And we actually met in Barranquilla about 3 months before I PCS back to the States.
They say the prettiest girls come from Cali.
Yeah. Well, they also say that, DEA agents come back with, when they go down to Colombia, they come back with a Colombian wife, even the married ones.
Ooh.
No. We had that working with the
a couple guys, I know.
Working with one of the Colombian officers, and they're looking at him, and I was being honest. I said, "Look, man, I bet a lot of guys, come down here single and leave married." She says, "A lot of married men, come down here and leave single, and it's just, oh man."
So I didn't come back with Colombian wife. I came back with 2 Colombian daughters.
There you go.
Now, JP tried to adopt a couple of Colombians too, but they were over 18 years old, and the government wasn't going to allow it.
Okay, he's single. You could give him a hard time for trying.
Well, see, I bragged that I did come back without a Colombian wife because it was like 2 years after I came back that we got married.
There you go.
So
congratulations.
Took you 2 years to close the deal?
Again, I bucked the system,
No. He's a little bit of a rabble rouser. He's stirring that pot.
Stir that pot. Well, let's talk about what you're doing now to stir the pot. So once you left DEA, December 31st, you said 2007. What'd you do after that?
I started my own private investigative agency. And I'm still doing that to this day.
Must be
Doing the
successful.
PI thing. Yeah, it is, and I work as much as I want. And I guess if I'm going to butt heads with anybody now, it's myself. So.
But the best thing about when you work for yourself, because I've been doing that for a long time now too, you can fire clients. I mean, you can fire people you don't want to work for. It's like, no,
Exactly.
I don't want to work for you.
Yeah, no, exactly,
You're fired.
exactly. But it's a lot of work. I do. And Steve will know Jim Milford. Jim and a buddy of mine who's also a customs agent have a company out of Miami, and I do a lot of work for them. I'm part of their group.
What kind of investigations?
We do a lot of most of what we do is litigation support, a lot of corporate stuff, which entails a lot of surveillance and then due diligence type reporting and that sort of thing. But yeah, it's a variety of things. Get involved with different products. If there's some product issues, I know a lot about pallets, shipping pallets. Working cases like that, they're just.
I mean, what? It's wood. It's nailed together. What else do you got to know about pallets?
There's a whole business side of this thing where if there's a system where money's being made, and if somebody can find a way to exploit that system and cheat the system, they'll do it.
So you're selling them 2 pallets when in reality you're only delivering 1, or
no. This has to do with there's about 3 companies out there that lease their pallets, and so if they call them the pallet gypsies. These guys go around behind stores, collect pallets. They come up with some of their pallets. They take it to a pallet recycler. And the program's set up that these companies that lease the pallets buy back their pallets. They pay you like a collection fee. Well, these recyclers can make more money reselling those pallets than they can giving it back to the rightful owner. And so that's where the fraud comes in, or it's theft,
oh yeah,
of these things. So yeah.
Hence
Who would have thunk it?
Yeah, hence.
Who would have thunk it?
No, and then when you start looking around, there's pallets everywhere, and I don't think there's hardly any commodity that's not delivered to the store on a pallet.
Coming from big beef country, Southwest Kansas, world's largest beef packing plant out there. You want to talk? I mean, there were companies out there that's all they did was make pallets, deliver pallets, because the food's got it. You got to put the byproducts on it. You got to put the meat on it.
Yeah.
Those huge things. And hence, I just realized too where the reference to Paul Drake, Perry Mason's investigator, came from. So it was the tie into your current work as an investigator. So
Yeah.
Do you fancy yourself Paul Drake? Will we see you in a fancy suit and slicked back hair?
I'm more of a Tom Selleck, I think. I got a closet full of Tommy Bahama Hawaiian shirts.
Oh, no.
You're talking my language, brother. Oh.
But I tell you, my wife doesn't like me to wear them a whole lot. She says they're outdated.
Take a look at my hat.
I saw it.
Everything I own, pretty much everything I own is Tommy Bahama.
Well, she's allowed me to wear some of the more current Tommy Bahama stuff. So she's got great taste. I can't complain.
Well, she picked you, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, so actually, real quick too, when you met your wife, did she speak any English?
Yes, as a matter of fact, she was the director of the Berlitz language school there in Barranquilla. And it was actually a blind date is how we met. Is another agent in the office was engaged to marry a Colombian gal, and so he was having her attend English classes prior to returning to the U.S. And so she says, "Hey, my fiance's got a bunch of single guys." So that was the beginning of it.
Yeah. Well, the funniest joke, well, not the funniest, but one of the funniest ones. I'm speaking of Berlitz School. Have you seen that kind of commercial on there where you see this kid and he looks like he's in some kind of a Navy uniform, but he's sitting there and guy pats him on the arm and he says in German, just monitor the radios. And then pretty soon you hear this British voice come on there. Attention, German Coast Guard. We are sinking. We are sinking. We need your help. We are sinking. And the guy in the German Coast Guard goes, "Hello, this is the German Coast Guard. What are you sinking about?"
No, I haven't seen that.
It was for the Berlitz School of English.
That was yeah, that's a great commercial.
Oh, it was funny. The kid kind of red haired, looked like a fresh face, recruit and stuff. So, but all right. So we've established that. So, what is are all your cases just corporate stuff, or did you have any of these led to any like real cloak and dagger type of stuff?
No. I wouldn't say any real cloak and dagger stuff. I avoid domestic stuff because no matter what the outcome is, they don't want to.
Nobody wins. Nobody wins in
No,
those.
and then they don't want to pay you because they say she's cheating. You say you prove she's not cheating, and they get mad and tell you didn't do your job. Or if you prove she's cheating, they're pissed off, and no, I stay away
Can't
from.
win.
No, no, there's it's really one reason I like it is because it's so varied. So many different things come up. Well, yeah.
But from a safety standpoint, personal safety standpoint, much safer than running dope and informants in foreign countries.
There's there's some sketchy neighborhoods from now and then you got to go into. Matter of fact, one of the things I was recently contracted to do is I got these like home health care people going into some bad neighborhoods. They're now deciding that they want armed, bodyguards basically to go with them.
Wow.
So I'll be doing some of that. In Florida here, as a private investigator, you're allowed to do, executive protection, or you're allowed to protect people. My license doesn't allow me to protect property, but I can protect people. So, yeah, I'll be doing some of that.
Don't you, Murph? I know you do it. I've got it. It's the HR 218. It's the law enforcement concealed carry. Have you got that as well?
Oh yeah, absolutely. But in Florida, as a private investigator, you're required to have a separate state license, a G license. I don't know, a lot of, and we always say, hey, we got HR 218. And they're also the same thing as, hey, what about a concealed carry? Because really the only reason you've got it is for in defense of yourself or someone else, just like any citizen would have that authority to utilize a firearm in those situations. So there may be some changes in law, but right now I've got to, even though I've got HR 218, I've got to have the they call it G license here in Florida. I guess G for gun, the gun license.
You're the trained investigator. You tell me.
It is Florida.
So,
well, you can't say G. Just remember, you can't say G. So can't say gun.
Yeah.
Hey, but actually, for the folks that may not be tracking, so they passed some laws and stuff, especially post 9/11, to where if you meet certain criteria, I think now it's a minimum of 10 years good service. You can get you have to go in and do a yearly qualification, and you can get a concealed carry permit that's good, throughout the nation. It standardizes your ability to carry concealed. But the one thing I still have I have a gripe with, because now I'm starting to feel it in my knees when they start doing the. You remember the one part where you got to get it down on your knees and take some
kneeling?
Like,
yeah.
Oh my God, dude, come on! Can how about if we just sit on a chair or a stool?
Fortunately, here in Florida, we don't have to go down to a kneeling position or a prone position. Yeah.
You just have to drive your car through the front of a diner somewhere and take a shot at the at the target, right?
Yeah.
Well, you want to blend in.
Exactly.
Just a land of turtles down here.
Well, I told you that was. I think I've told you this before, Murph, too. But when the first training I ever went to down in Florida, law enforcement training, I see this T-shirt and I wasn't sure where it was going. It said, "When I go ... I want to go peaceful and asleep like my grandfather did." And then they walk by, and you always have to see what's on the back. It said, "Not like the other 6 people screaming in his car."
Yeah, that'll be me.
I mean, that's why I don't ride with Murph anymore. I'll take Uber. I'll take somebody who's got all the tickets. No, hey, but Eric, I mean, this has been great too, because what's fun is, you dealt with Luis for so long, or Luis as we say in Espanol. So Luis, but you dealt with him for so long. Kind of let's close out with this on a scale of 1 to 10. Like when you get somebody who's a 10, like a Pablo or an El Chapo, in terms of their rank and structure and their importance in the organization, and ones are just like you're just street level hand to hand dealers that are out there on the street somewhere just dealing in grams. Where does Luis rank in terms of like structure in the overall organization? Where would he have been?
I'm gonna have to rate maybe about an 8, and that's because he provided a really vital role, the transportation role. But in terms of the narco lifestyle, their narco personality. He's like, he's like a 1 or 2 or something. He's a businessman. I mean, he could. Well, he's doing well now in business, but and he even admits it. If he had just put his energies in other directions instead of trying to, make the fast buck and the high life, he got caught up at an early age with that whole glamorous, Miami dope scene, and so yeah. But he provided the logistics that are involved in transportation at that level. It's pretty sophisticated.
Yeah, and if you don't think logistics are important, ask the Russian army as they
Yeah.
grind to a halt and their logistics suck and their ability to supply fuel and food.
And one of the reasons that everything went south for those guys down in Venezuela is because they didn't follow Lewis's suggestions or recommendations, and people started doing other things, and it led to exposure. So who knows how it turned out if Lewis had his way completely in that whole operation.
Been 25,000 more kilos of cocaine over in Europe.
Is over in Europe, yeah.
Hey, so let's close out with this. One of the last things he said, and I know you kind of poo-pooed it a little bit, but Lewis was very serious when he talked to us about it. He said you saved his life in more ways than one. I mean, I don't think it's just the getting arrested, but I think it was you guys created kind of a unique relationship. What did Luis mean, and how does he tell you when he says, "Look, Eric, you saved my life"?
Well, he'd either be dead. Somebody, something would have happened, and somebody wouldn't be as forgiving as Rascunio was in that particular case, or he'd still be in federal prison. He'd die in federal prison. I mean, if they put everything on him that he was responsible for, it was a life sentence. And then the lifestyle too. He got out of that lifestyle, being arrested. In terms of the drugs and the heavy drinking and all that business. I mean, that'll kill you too. So, I mean, when he got out of jail, I was the first person he saw. He said, I met him at the hotel where he was staying, and that's when we kind of established how we were going to continue cooperating. How he's going to continue working with us.
Well, and he's continued to cooperate and work with you to this day, just in other ways, right? You guys actually still go out to dinner and get together, right?
Yeah. He's met my wife. Met our little toy Pomeranian dog. We've met his current girlfriend, and so yeah. And I know his sister. I've met his sister before and stuff, and so yeah.
And I think there's a picture in the book, but there's another one too, right? Where you guys get together and he kind of completes the joke. Doesn't he give a tie out?
Yeah, when Jesse Fink was up here, we the four of us had lunch with together, Bob, Lewis, myself, and Jesse, and so still Lewis, the practical, he loves to joke around and and have a good time. So he got Harley another tie, presented the tie to him. Bob was still working at the time; he's since retired, but so Bob was a little more reserved at that meeting because worked for internal affairs for the Homeland Security.
Now, could he actually accept the tie, or did he have to have Luis keep it for him?
It was under $25. I don't remember what
Here's a Maserati. It's under $25.
I can't remember what the rules were, but I know I never took anything because I never took anything, but that's why I think Bob was a little uncomfortable. But since there had been a history, I don't know.
But think about this. All these cases, Steve. I mean, Murph, did you ever have a case where somebody just? It was kind of in a good-natured way, but it was kind of like ribbing. It was kind of like, "Ha, you can't catch me. Here's another tie."
Never. When somebody does that, it becomes personal.
Yeah.
I mean, we've had cases where people have left their calling card like a turd in the toilet, or done something like that. But I never got ties.
Yeah. Or the challenge, catch me if you can.
But Lewis he's kind of funny that way. Like, he always wore polo long sleeve dress shirts, and he would monogram the sleeves. And so I asked him one time, this was in Venezuela. I asked him, and he says, and he was telling me about different aliases, and he was changing his alias. And I said, well, yeah. but what do you do? Go out and buy all new shirts? He says, no. I keep the same initials. It'd be too expensive to go out and and too much of a hassle to go out and buy new shirts all the time. So Luis Navia, he would always have the same alias. So just a little quirk.
And there is another way to track somebody. It's like we're talking right now with Dave and Chris about Miguel and his need to have certain things there, and Pablo had to have the gold-plated shitters,
Yeah. So if we had been hip to that, we would have said, okay, let's look for another alias and LN.
Yeah.
Bob could have tracked him down sooner. So.
Or just look for, when you're out there, don't worry about fingerprints. Just look for the guy that's got the monogram shirt, with LN. Oh man. Well, hey, dude, this has been fun. This is what's interesting is, like I say, we always, we don't interview that many folks on the other side, of the law, but Luis was he was an interesting character. I mean, the book, like you said, Jesse he did do a lot of research on that book, and there is a lot of detail in there, but just Luis, just his openness about stuff and his ability, and you could see where he was the businessman, because he doesn't come across as the hardened narco Rasguño type or the Pablo type or the El Chapo type. He really was. He was a businessman, but the life he led, I'm surprised that just the life he led, just the crap he was doing didn't kill him with the dope and the alcohol.
Yeah, no,
So,
it should have. It should have.
But you saved him. So, and look, we saved you because we're going to ensure that you don't get kicked out of Florida. I wrote Governor DeSantis. I said, leave Eric alone.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. But I'm trying to do better as I get older, I'm
trying to do better. Hey, we'll have to have a whole episode about, we'll do a place of 5-star reviews of all the places Eric has been kicked out of, Where's your favorite place when you're working on Pan X, And Barranquilla. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, man.
5-star reviews of restaurants that I used to attend in Barranquilla when I was assigned there. So we'll do that.
Hey, Eric, it's been a real pleasure, brother, catching up with you after all these years.
Likewise, and get over this side of the state. Let me know. We'll get together.
Well, I actually emailed Luis to tell him that you were going to be on the show today, and he's like, "Oh, we got to all get together now. We're all
yeah.
So I'm sure we will at some point.
Just prepare for a 5-hour dinner with Luis. Yeah,
and we'll all get good times.
It's he gets on a roll, and he loves to talk about all this stuff, and it ought to be a reality show following him around some night. I mean, I think it was it even in the book, when they came up here, we went to a little blues club, and he gets up on a stage, there's a band set up, and starts playing the drums.
He was playing drums in prison. You see the picture of the book in prison. He's playing drums.
Yeah. And so, they politely asked him to get off the stage.
Yeah.
What, after 17 songs in a row? Luis, I think we've heard enough. Yeah.
No. So, yeah, he's I say he's a cross between Danny DeVito and Mr. Magoo.
You know what? He should be your next undercover. You ought to do your operation and travel around following the new version of the Grateful Dead.
He wants to come with me on all my PI stuff all the time. Just give me a badge and a gun.
This reminds me of 48 Hours with Nick Nolte and Eddie Murphy. I just don't think it's going to go well.
Yeah. It would be one of those.
Y'all be cool. There's a new sheriff in town, and his name is Luis Navia.
That's right.
It would be one of those.
All right, man. Well, Eric, hey, buddy, this has been great stuff. Thank you so much. Again, and thank you for your work, too. And especially, I know you said it was kind of like your last 8 months, but the diversion stuff you did, too. I'm just telling you, from watching this stuff and seeing what's going on, so important that you address both sides of it, both the illegal substances and the legal stuff. And we want to thank you for your service to this country. And thank you for being a great guest, man. You were good. We didn't kick you off the podcast. You're making progress.
Like I said, I'm getting older. I'm getting smarter, and learning how to hold my tongue sometimes.
Mellowing out a little.
Exactly.
Well, so we're going to close out this podcast where we have to kick Eric off of it. So anyway, hey guys, so that brings it to an end. Everybody stay tuned, and the rest of you stand by for the debrief. Well, that did not disappoint. I mean, he is tied into so many programs, so many places. But, at some point, and with Eric, did you get kicked out of a few things? Maybe he was kind of a pain in the ass. But you know what? The dude had his heart in the right place. You know, he was, and the other thing too, it's amazing. Even though he was kind of brought in late in the game for the whole operation with Luis, he was the one that ended up becoming the primary contact and the gatekeeper for Luis. So it was kind of transitioned from the customs to DEA because of the way Eric treated Luis and treated people from the start.
Right. And the thing I admire about not only Eric, but almost anybody you meet in DEA, they will not hesitate to take on an assignment. So, I mean, just imagine yourself, you're stationed wherever you are in the United States, and they say, listen, we need somebody to go down to Venezuela to see if we can capture this guy. And, Venezuela's not the most U.S. friendly country in the world back then. It certainly isn't now. But no hesitation on Eric's part whatsoever. He said, I'm up for the challenge. Let's go. That's what I love about the people in DEA. They're not afraid to take on a challenge. They put some of the biggest criminals in the world in jail, criminals that nobody else could touch. And Eric just proved up to live, to continue that legend about the DEA.
And if you've listened to the episode, you will understand that Eric Kolbinsky is a riot, literally.
Yeah.
A couple of them.
What I'm looking forward, we actually don't live too far from each other now. So I'm looking forward to getting together with him and Luis Navia, believe it or not.
That will be an interesting lunch, and I want you to just live stream it for me in the background so I can just hear what's going on. But anyway, but let's not get into an unauthorized wiretaps yet. So anyway, guys, hey, thanks once again. Head on over. Just hope you guys enjoyed that episode. We've got some great ones coming up. We have a whole series. We started with Christy Schiller, so we have a whole series coming up on the Canines for Cops. Some of these incredible stories, so that's going to be coming out. But to hear it, you got to just tell your friends. Tell one, share one. Head on over to Apple Podcasts and the Spotify. Hit that 5 stars. It's magic. We don't know how it works. We just know it does, and it really helps. Head on over to gameofcrimespodcast.com. We've got all of our show stuff there. Our book stuff is going to be there. Anybody who writes a book, we put it up on our book page. We've got a lot of books up there now, so it's amazing how many of the people on our podcast have written books. But follow us also on the social media, at Game of Crimes on Twitter, at Game of Crimes Podcast on Facebook, and the Instagram. If you want to just do a quick pause for the cause, head on over to paypal.com and use our email, gameofcrimespodcast@gmail.com. or paypal.me/gameofcrimes, whatever it makes it easier for you. But seriously, got to head on over to Patreon. We dropped our episode this last week, the April edition of You Can't Make This Shit Up. We've got our 911, What's Your Emergency coming up for May. And we've got coming up too, we just finished episode 12. And I think this is probably, Steve, going to be a 16-parter with Chris and Dave on the Real DEA Narcos, talking about the Real DEA Narcos Cali edition. We are having such fun with these guys. Every time we get on the air with them, we find out Chris sandbagged us once again on another story he should have told us when we did our episode with him.
And we're not giving it away, but I think it's episode 12, right? You've got to listen to that one. You got to
listen to episode 12 and find out. They didn't go into the cane fields once, but twice. And this time when the police approached, how did they get out of the cane fields? You'll have to join Patreon and go find out.
I tell you, I'm loving this guy. Talking to Chris and Dave, I'm just learning so much about the Cali cartel and what they were doing and the things that they were doing. And Javier and I mean, we were in a lot of dangerous situations, but these guys were out there, man. I mean, they were hung out there by themselves for a while.
Yeah, in a cane field. With the top enforcer for the Cali cartel and a police van approaching. What could go wrong?
Yeah.
You'll have to tune in and find out. Patreon.com/Game of Crimes. But so thus into the reading again for episode 45. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that. We love bringing you this stuff, and we love bringing it because we know that you guys are players in the biggest, baddest, most dangerous game of all, the Game of Crimes.